Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this workshop on ocean health and observation. It's aimed primarily at beneficiaries of EMFF and EMFAF projects, but as many of you know from previous workshops, the aim of our work is not just to support beneficiaries of projects funded by the EMFF and the EMFAF, but rather to foster synergies and cooperation between beneficiaries of any projects, well, any funding programs of the EU, which is the reason why today you're gonna hear several points of view from project beneficiaries of EMFF projects, and also a few experiences from non-EMFF and EMFAF projects. You know, the workshop is going to last until 1 p.m. Hopefully, we be able to finish a bit earlier. That very much depends on my speakers' time management skills and also results of the breakout discussion in the second session. Now, before I leave the floor to the speakers, I'd like to outline some very basic housekeeping rules. Well, please make sure your full name and affiliation are displayed. If you don't know how to do it, you can change your name by clicking on the participants button at the bottom or at the top, it depends on where the bar is. Next, hover your mouse over your name in the participants list on the right side of the Zoom window, click more and then rename. And you'll be able to rename. Please make sure your affiliation is displayed, because after the workshop, we'll be able to assign you to a project or an institution. In the first session, the one we're just about to be getting started with, if you want to ask a question to a speaker, please use the chat. In the second session, on the other hand, we encourage you to raise your hand and take the floor. The second session will be an interactive group discussion, so everyone is encouraged to speak up. The meeting, as you probably know, is being recorded, and the recording will be uploaded on the YouTube channel of this project. If you don't want to appear in the recording, please make sure your webcam remains turned off throughout the meeting. Make sure you attend the breakout session, because the best always comes last. And for any problems, issues, glitches during the meeting, please send a chat message to my colleague Anna Kiushitska. You'll find her name in the participants list. And now, enough with the talking. I would like to leave the floor to Luca Marangoni from CINEA, who's gonna open this meeting. Please, Luca, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Alessandro. And I would like to, to welcome everybody on behalf of CINEA. As you know, CINEA is managing now almost 60 billion euro on behalf of the European Commission on several programs. And indeed, today, our interest is very much on looking into the synergy between LIFE, Horizon, and EMFF, EMFAF. You have seen there are several projects funded by the EMFAF that are in a way relevant to ocean health, and in particular also to ocean observation, exchange of data. And this is in a way the first time that we really managed to bring together, let's say, grant and contract, because one important component, at least it will emerge most likely in the discussion, and I'm sure Iain will talk about it, is also the possible link between result generated by the grants and the MONET, the network on ocean observation that the European Commission is funding since 2014, I think, if I'm not wrong, and which is also an important part of our work in our unit on sustainable economy at CINEA. I would like in particular to thank the beneficiaries, the coordinator, because we were just talking with Alessandro today. We are at the 8th workshop of this contract on synergies and clustering among maritime projects. And we understand that, this has also required a lot of work from beneficiary side. Their participation has been very valuable, important so far. We are still having, let's say, 2 seminars in our pipeline for May before ending this contract. So many thanks also for being so active and participating in our work. I think I can leave the floor to Iain.
Okay,
please.
Hello. I'll share my screen. Screen 2. Share. File. Slideshow from beginning. You can see it?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I'll say why we need. I'll talk more about ocean observation than ocean health, but they're linked, because if you don't have ocean observation, you can't measure the health. So the Green Deal has brought an incredible number of new initiatives for the health of the oceans. The Biodiversity Action Plan. And if you read the text, they all require that you've got to monitor them appropriately. So you've got the Biodiversity Action Plan, the Zero Pollution Action Plan, the Offshore Energy Strategy, which needs the measurement for the licensing, the Farm to Fork. So we've got to measure the reduction of the environmental and climate footprint. We've got the Circular Economy Action Plan, where we need harmonized data on microplastics. We've got the EU strategy on adaptation to climate change, which promises that ocean measurements and observation will also be further strengthened. And there's the proposal for a nature restoration law, which will require the observation of seagrass beds, macro, it should be algal forests, and all these types of habitats. So let's look for a minute at the observation value chain. So as you know, you start off with observation and measurements. You go through the data synthesis and modeling. Then there's public and private intermediary businesses use these data to create value-added information products. And then you've got end users who need the data. So these are the wind farms, these are the environmental agencies, these are the fisheries bodies, this is the coast guards. So let's look at the American, what they call the ocean enterprise. And they say it's gone up from 2015 to 2020 from 7 billion a year to 8 billion a year. That's dollars, but dollars and euros are similar, I think. So, exports are approximately 2 billion. And this is all parts of the value chain. This is making the equipment, using the equipment, making the measurements, analyzing the measurements, and presenting the results to people. So that's significantly more than in the EU. If you look at ocean observation in the EU, if you look at the equipment for ocean observation, so the investment costs are something like 8 billion, 99% on ships, and the annual operation costs 800 million, 85% on ships. So if we see the priorities for technology that were identified in a workshop between Eurogoose, between Goose, NOAA, and somebody else, I think UNESCO, they identified these priorities. We need power for instruments in the deep sea. You know, they solar power, batteries, cabling. You can't plug them into the mains. You need small scale plug and play autonomous instruments. There's big gaps in observation in developing countries, so they've got to be cheap. New techniques for measuring marine life. Here we mean eDNA, or image analysis through artificial intelligence. platforms. Instead of just monitoring one thing, they should monitor a lot of things. A new thing is standards and technologies for verifying carbon removals. ARPA, which is the American civilian equivalent to DARPA for the defense, and they're already financing many projects on this. So this is particularly interesting for us, for blue carbon, which presently is not included in emissions inventories in Europe. And we want to reduce the carbon footprint, primarily by replacing ships with autonomous vehicles. So this is a prime example. Melissa will like this because she's, if you do the seabed mapping with an ex-ocean drone, you have lower emissions, lower costs, and more safety. And ex-ocean is one of our prime examples. I think they started out with about 25 employees before COVID, and now they've got more than 250. This is a great success story. Melissa might give the exact numbers, but it's something of this order. Interestingly, their primary customers are the private bodies, not the public bodies. Public bodies are much more conservative and want to keep using their ships. But if we look at suppliers of sensors to the European market, we can see that for some parameters, the only suppliers are from the USA. For dissolved oxygen and fluorescent nitrates, that we're all buying them from the USA. So we're somewhere behind the USA in ocean observation. I'd like to look at another of our success stories, which is you will be well aware of it if you followed these things. This is the underwater Internet of Things with Chiara and her colleagues from Rome. And one thing you'll notice is that as well as funding from us, they're getting funding from defense industries, so, from the defense bodies. So enough of rainbows, unicorns, and kumbaya. Let's talk about tough things. So the rationale for the European Defence Fund, this was a presentation made in the last commission by Federica Mogherini and Kaitanen, the vice presidents of the commission. And they said, we need a defense fund because we need this economic, strategic, and political reasons for doing this. And defense is a big market, and one where Europe is behind even further than in civilian. So if we look at our research programs for 2021-27, we've got the European Defence Fund, 8 billion, and we've got Horizon Europe, 100 billion. So it's a little bit underfunded. However, in Horizon Europe, we're also including things like cybersecurity, maritime security, robotics, artificial intelligence, and advanced materials, which all have a security contribution. So if you look at the EU policies for dual use, we have two objectives. One, we want to avoid their use by the enemy, but and that's quite complicated. There's a list of technologies that we can't export, but I'm not going to talk about that. More about the EU support for the new technologies. And here we need to shift laboratory research to the market. If you look at the for instance, the main market for underwater the main companies in the underwater drones, there's not many in the EU. France and Sweden, but mostly USA dominating. And grants alone are not enough. If you look at the analysis that Alessandro's team have done on the outcome of projects that have been funded by the EMFAF, we'll see that the number of new paying, most projects didn't produce any new paying customers or any new investors. So maybe the writing's too small, but the successful ones were very few. So we need to think about how we're supporting this shift from the laboratory to the market. So there's the European Innovation Council, which supports early stage validation and commercialization, and that's the 2023 budget. And the grants, 4 million, 2.5 million, and then for the commercialization, they move into, they're supporting with equity as well. So there's also a hub for European defense innovation. So this is another initiative which is trying to move to do what we're doing, to try to get more clustering and synergies, but more in the defense area. And finally, we have Blue Invest, which is our initiative. Surely you know about it, which is trying to provide support to companies to try to get them into the market. And it's also accompanied by a fund, which is, instead of providing grants, it's providing equity on slightly better terms than you can get from the market, and also bringing in private investors. So it reduces the risk for private investors. And it's only beginning now because it took some time to get started, but it's in collaboration with InvestEU, EMFAF, and the European Investment Fund. So that's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Iain. As usual, your presentations are always thoughtful and inspiring. And I guess this was a rather comprehensive overview of what the European Commission is doing. Not only the European Commission is doing to support ocean health and observation. I particularly liked your first remark when you said that you know more about observation than about health. But thing is that there is no observation. There is no, I mean, it's very difficult to assess the health of our oceans without proper and thorough observation, which is why the two things are joined together. Now, I would like to move on with a few examples of projects that have been dealing with ocean health and observation. And as I said at the beginning, first we're going to see a few projects funded by the EMFF in this case. And then we're also, but you know that, I mean, the ocean health and observation is not supported by the Commission only through the EMFF. In fact, there's a multitude of funding programs that also address ocean health and observation. We have Horizon, we have LIFE. It's not the funding program that matters, but it's rather the topic that we want to delve into in this workshop. So now we're going to see two projects funded by the EMFF. ExPloTect and BASTA. Both are were coordinated by GEOMAR from Germany, and I think the interesting thing here is to have a look, aside from the project itself, of course, at how the synergies were established between two projects and how the results of the two projects were combined. This is also one of the key objectives of our work here, to make sure that the precious work delivered by a project beneficiary doesn't get lost when the project ends. But I'd like you to hear it from the project coordinator. So I'm leaving the floor to Aaron from GEOMAR. Over to you, Aaron, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you also for the invitation to join this morning. Let me see if I can share the right screen.
We can see your screen now.
You can see it now. Okay, great. Thank you. Right. So my name is Aaron Beck. I was the coordinator for the ExPloTect project, which just ended at the end of last year. And I'll also be talking about the BASTA project, which was coordinated by Professor Iain Shepherd here at GEOMAR. And so we worked very closely together. Just to give you a little bit of overview of what the two projects were about, I think it becomes a little bit more clear why the projects were so easy to connect. So both of these projects dealt with munitions in the sea. ExPloTect had a relatively small consortium, 3 partners, 1 partner in Germany and 1 in the UK. And BASTA had 4 partners. In addition to GEOMAR, there was 2 partners in Belgium and 1 additional partner also in Germany. Just a little bit of background on the munitions in the sea problem for those of you who aren't aware of this problem. It's really an EU and global issue. So the coastal waters worldwide are contaminated with relic munitions, especially those derived from the First and Second World Wars. So of course, Europe is particularly impacted by the problem. In both BASTA and ExPloTect, we were focused on the North Sea and the Baltic Sea, so two sea regions which are really heavily impacted by the munitions problem. But this is also prevalent throughout the Mediterranean and the Atlantic as well. So this map in the lower right-hand corner shows munition encounters, munition dump sites, essentially relic munition contamination around EU waters. And from a blue economy perspective, munitions are a problem because anytime any offshore development occurs, the munitions have to be identified and cleared. It's a very costly process. The presence of munitions can also affect tourism, and there's also the release of toxic chemicals from these objects, which may be a risk for aquatic ecosystems. So in ExPloTect and BASTA, we were really focused, especially on this perspective of how do we improve and make more efficient the process of finding and clearing munitions for offshore development. So in ExPloTect, we were taking a chemical perspective. We wanted to develop some technology to try and measure the chemical plumes coming from underwater munitions and use those measurements to identify munition objects. So this was really a technology-driven project. We were doing a bit of basic development. In BASTA, the idea was to take a lot of geophysical data from a number of different sensors and combine that data to improve identification of munitions objects. So this included everything from sub-bottom profiling, magnetics, bathymetry mapping, and combine all of this into sort of a big data analysis kind of perspective. And then ultimately, once we started working together, we also wanted to try and include our chemical data in this multi-data or multi-sensor database. Both projects ran from December 2019 until November of last year. One of the big challenges of both projects was that they were directly centered during the Corona time. And of course, one of the benefits was that since both were coordinated at the same institution, it certainly made working together and coordinating common activities a lot easier. So within both of these projects, we really relied heavily on doing field work. So this was really seagoing cruises to do field testing of technology that was developed along the way. Also collecting new data, so collecting new chemical data, collecting new geophysical data. And so one of the things that we did from the very beginning was to coordinate joint research cruises where we had members from both projects working together on the same cruises. And that was a big advantage, not just because it improved our access to ship time and seagoing platforms, and also made it much easier because these are very labor intensive to coordinate and execute. But that we also were able to share data along the way. We were able to benefit from some of the geophysical mapping on the chemical side, and then we were able to provide some of our chemical measurements to the geophysicists, so that we sort of had this ongoing synergy in the field over the project lifetime. We also collaborated on stakeholder engagement. So because both projects were focused on this very specific topic of munitions in the sea, we had very similar stakeholder groups. So we held many joint stakeholder events. We had a joint kickoff meeting with a lot of stakeholders, and had various events throughout the project lifetime where we basically were able to provide the project progress to a single group of stakeholders that was really across a wide range of entities. So everything from militaries to commercial UXO clearance operations, academic research institutions, NGOs, really a wide range of stakeholders. And one of the really nice benefits of this was that some of the target stakeholders, at least that were initially anticipated for one project or the other, were made aware of the other project and were actually very interested in some of the activities in the other project. So, for example, the UXO clearance firms that we had identified as our target stakeholders in ExPloTect were also very interested, became very interested in the geophysical developments that happened in the BASTA project. And then conversely, this is just one example. So this is a crawler system that's developed by one of the companies that was a stakeholder in the BASTA project, but they became very interested in the ExPloTect chemical detection technology. And this was one of our joint tests with a crawler that they developed. And there on the top, you can see this pressure housing, which is one of the devices that was developed in ExPloTect. So this was, I think, probably the biggest advantage, or the biggest synergy that happened within the two projects, was this accessing of a much wider group of stakeholders. We also did a number of outreach events for this very wide range audience. So as I mentioned, these are national and EU sort of level militaries and commercial entities. Also NGOs, various academic institutions, and also the general public and education at all levels, from sort of primary schools all the way up to universities. We held a number of joint workshops, and we collaborated on a number of presentations, both public and sort of private presentations that we organized with politicians. And this had both the benefit of reaching that wider group of stakeholders, but also was a much more efficient use of resources. So we were able to really make the most of the financial resources that we had allocated in the project, in both projects, to really get sort of a double effect. And we also held a number of joint events that also included public media representatives. So there in the upper picture, you see this is a film crew from a German TV program that participated in one of these joint cruises between BASTA and ExPloTect. And from those joint events, then we were both able to get relevant publicity. Some of the challenges, we were able to plan a lot of these activities ad hoc. We sort of had to, and it really worked and was very efficient because of the close proximity that we had between the two projects. But I can imagine that this would be more challenging under other circumstances. We also work closely with a lot of the project partners in both projects, both before ExPloTect and BASTA started, as well as during the projects. And so one of the challenges is that we weren't really able to plan this during the proposal planning stage. So one question, and one of the things I would like to learn from this workshop is how can we promote that planning as early as possible? How can we make that planning happen as close to the proposal development stage as possible? And then also, how in the future do we also try to branch out and make stronger connections with projects that might not be so directly connected? So, of course, BASTA and ExPloTect were sort of unique in that they were both dealing with this problem of underwater munitions. But of course, most projects are not so directly similar. And a little bit of this happened during the kickoff meeting in Brussels for the EMFF projects. That's something that I think probably could be improved in the future. Just a quick comment on continued and sort of sustaining activities. So we have a number of activities, a number of projects that directly followed from BASTA and ExPloTect. And a number of these projects also include partners in both of those projects, and sort of a mixture of the two. There you see three. You can see the titles all focused on munitions as well. And one of the big outcomes of these two projects was there was a lot of visibility, and because we had access to such a good group of stakeholders, that the visibility of the munitions problem at the EU level and particularly the national level here in Germany really increased over that time. And there is actually now, happened at the end of last year, political action to begin proactive clearance of munitions in German waters. So we see this sort of as a direct outcome of some of the activities that we did in the two projects. And what we see towards the future is taking the tools that were developed in both of these projects and trying to extend those beyond munitions. So there's a very specific topic of munitions, but we see these as being applicable. For example, the technology that we developed in ExPloTect, here you see an image of the prototype for developing advanced chemical monitoring platforms. So going beyond sort of traditional sensor-based platforms to some of these sort of lab on a chip or lab in a box kind of platforms. And then leveraging data that's collected in non-traditional sectors. So for example, in commercial sectors or in the military sector, and leveraging that data for R&D and academic research activities. And then one of the outcomes of BASTA, or one of the tools that was produced, is this artificial intelligence tool for analyzing big data and managing that data and using it for commercial purposes. And so there are, of course, extensions of that beyond munitions. So hopefully I'm still sort of within my time, Alessandro, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron. There is a question indeed, and it is from Iain, and he's asking, what are the main risks from munitions, main risks to human activity, to ecosystems? He's never heard of accidents. Please.
Yeah, so it's actually surprising how rare accidents are. There are a number of incidents of detonations from munitions that were fished by commercial fishers. So over the last 80 years, there are a number of isolated also events where munitions are being cleared and there are accidental detonations. But in general, these munitions seem to be reasonably well managed. So they're cleared regularly every time that there's some sort of offshore development. They have to be cleared in order to reduce risks during, for example, pipeline installation or installation of wind parks. And I think a lot of that is due to the expertise of these UXO clearance firms. What we now also know is that there is a large release of chemical through munitions. It's not entirely clear what the risk to the ecosystems is, but there are a number of projects that are ongoing to try and identify or understand what the risk of that chemical release is.
Well, thank you very much. Unless there's any other question, well, anyway, even if we move on, you can always use the chat to ask questions to Aaron anytime. We're some 15 minutes late, which is still acceptable, especially because I have a trick to still end the meeting as scheduled. But so without further ado, let's move on with the next project beneficiary, who is Fantina Madricardo from ISMAR-CNR, Italy.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. I just share my screen.
Yes, please.
I hope you see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So just make it as a presentation. So it's a bit hard because I will have to talk about 3 projects. So, but I will start from MarGnet, which was the one that started everything, so to say. MarGnet stays for mapping and recycling of marine litter and ghost nets of the seafloor. We know that the marine litter issue is a growing global concern, and so that what MarGnet wanted to do was to find solutions to address this problem. And the MarGnet project was a relatively small project. It had 5 partners and a financing of about 600,000 euros, and it started in January 2019, and it ended in December 2020. It had 5 partners, mostly from the Northern Adriatic Sea. So what was the MarGnet concept? The MarGnet concept was to really try to address the different aspects that are related to the marine litter issue. First of all, the mapping, so where to find the litter, to know where it is, and then also the using modeling, mathematical modeling to understand the trajectories of the litter once it ends up in the water. And then, of course, the reducing the recovery of the litter. And one topic that was addressed by MarGnet was the recycling. So what do we do with the litter once we find it, once we recover it? And of course, this needs to be also related to the involvement of certain category stakeholders like fishermen or in general citizen. And it needs also to include legislation. So it's a very related to how also the treatment of litter. It's a very delicate and complex subject that needs to be addressed. So first of all, MarGnet developed some methods to map high resolution mapping of seafloor litter. We were focusing on seafloor litter because what we see on our strands or what we see floating on the ocean is just a small percentage of the litter that are in our seas and oceans. So we need also to understand to what extent the litter distributed on our seafloors. For example, here it's an example of maps that we obtained with the litter distributions in the Northern Adriatic Sea. This is an example using the mathematical model tracking litter that from aquaculture sources. But of course, one of the main results of MarGnet was to develop a prototype that used low temperature pyrolysis to chemical recycling the litter, because the marine litter is really very hard to be processed, since it's mixed, it's dirty, so it's really difficult to do something with that. So most of it either ends up in the waste disposal, or or time is even re-put in the ocean by the fisherman who collects it. So what we did, so our partner Sintol developed this prototype that chemical recycled the litter without the need of pretreatment, and okay, we did of course some experiments, and out of it we were able to produce marine gas oil that was completely certified, so equivalent to the one that you buy when you go tanking in the tanking place. So and also we demonstrate that through a study that we carried out an independent study that we carried out in the project, that actually with this project we avoid up to 0.5 CO2 equivalent tons during a production of a ton of this fuel. So the fuel was used also to do demonstration with the fishermen, because of course the idea would be to encourage the fishermen to collect the litter to, to have some kind of rewarding exchange. So in this case, a marine gas oil. But of course, this is one possibility, because with chemical recycling, you can do, many other things, not only marine gas oil, but also chemicals, so primary chemicals again. So from MarGnet, after MarGnet, we started immediately another bigger project in H2020, MAELSTROM. MAELSTROM has 14 partners. CNR is always the lead partner, and it has about a EU contribution of about 6 million. And it started in January 2021, and it will end so it's ongoing. It will end in December 2024. So it was upscaling 10 times, so to say, in terms of financing. The concept of MAELSTROM is more or less the same. So we need to, localize and characterize the areas where there are marine litter hotspots, specifically on the seafloor, but also in this case we consider the litter that is in the water column. And specifically, MAELSTROM develops what MarGnet was not doing, develops specific technologies to remove the litter from the environment. I will show you now. And then there is, of course, the sorting. So there are technologies to improve the sorting of the litter. And then there is a part of the project that is dedicated to the transformation of marine litter in other products. Not only this time not only through low temperature pyrolysis, although we are still using the MarGnet prototype in the project, but also through other mechanical mechanical recycling. So, and the final part is dedicated to marketizing, so to really try to go to the market with the products we obtain. The two demo sites where we actually implemented we are implementing the removal technologies are close to the Porto and the Ave River, where we will this summer install the bubble barrier that we show you, and the other pilot is the Venice coastal area. So in the Venice coastal area, we have implemented the MAELSTROM seabed cleaning platform that was operative last September and will be operative again in June. And in the Ave River, we are developing the bubble barrier that is a curtain of bubbles that prevents the litter to reach the sea when it's put at the estuary of a river. So this is the seabed cleaning platform. It was already patented by our partner Tecnalia last year, and it's a barge with the underwater cable robot. So a robot that you see here in the middle, that it's operated by cables. I cannot go into detail, of course, but I invite you to see the video. It's very interesting to see how it works, and it can collect, of course, a macro litter. So if you have a big hot spots of litter that are discharged in coastal areas, you can go and collect that with this robot. The robot also is implementing artificial intelligence tools to work autonomously at the end of the project. So the part of feeding circular economy and sustainability it involves, as I said, a different kind of marine litter recycling and the development of a sorting robot. This is an example of a product that we did that our partner GIS Recycling produced with the you see the filaments, the green and yellow. These are the nets that were collected during the project that were used to produce this table, this material. And this is an example of material we are producing, and it will have a MAELSTROM guaranteed marine litter tag, since we have an app to follow all the passage of that. And this is also the first results of the artificial intelligence-driven robotic system to segregate litter that is designed and is still developing by our partner Tecnalia. And as I said, is still the process of chemical recycling, so an upgrade to a larger scale of the MarGnet prototype. Okay, this is also, of course, we are, we organize ourselves, we cluster with other group technology projects, and We organize every year an international workshop for removal of marine litter and circular economy. Already had 2 editions, and there will be one in June this year. And of course, MAELSTROM, sustains the EU mission on restore our ocean and waters by 2030 and the joint charter. I want to say also that after also we got, so CNR is coordinating also a live stream project that is at the scale of the Mediterranean. You see here 4 pilot areas that are in the southern of the Mediterranean, and where we actually go to deep water. So whereas MAELSTROM is dedicated to coastal areas, live stream goes really to deep reef restoration and litter removal in the Mediterranean, where we want to restore areas where we know there are cold water corals, coralligenous, so this is also another project that started in September last year and will last for 4 or 5 more years. And also I want to mention that our partner Sintol participated to the National Recovery Fund with the technology developed during MarGnet, and actually won a financial a call for to upgrade and have 15 tons per day pyrolysis plant, together of course with other partners in Calabria. They're waiting for the financing, so to say. So it's also, I think, a very nice success of the MarGnet, starting from the MarGnet project. Finally, I just talk about the last attempt we had to get finance was the MarGate project. So where we wanted to upgrade the technologies. Unfortunately, not pass, but we cannot always get past the. It was potentially co-founded by the local Venice waste management company. But okay, it did not pass the selection. But I want to mention, we are going on, but looking for financial funds, so support. So this was it. I hope I stayed in the time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Fantina, especially because you somehow managed to present not 1, not 2, but 3 projects. We're running a bit late, and we were supposed originally to be taking our coffee break in 10 minutes, but we have 1 presentation left. Now, as I truly and wholeheartedly believe in democracy, I'm going to leave the decision to you all. That's why I am launching a poll. So for you to decide if we should take our coffee break now or after the next presentation. Don't worry about don't worry about the end of the meeting. It's going to be okay. We're going to end at 1 p.m. or even before, but it depends on how much you're craving for coffee. Okay, only 50% of people cast their vote, which is in line with general elections in Italy anyway. Okay, so after the next presentation seems to be the preferred option. In this case, I would like now to introduce the next speaker, and I must say this is going to be, well, I think at least quite an interesting presentation. I've known Dick Schaap from MARES for, I think, 13 or 15 years now, thanks to our mutual involvement in EMFAF. And I must say, not sure if we ever talked about this, but I must say I have profound admiration for what he has built over the year. This presentation is interesting because Dick somehow managed to build a network of organization observing the ocean, collecting data. So exactly what Iain was talking. He did it a very long time ago. In a sense, he's a visionary. And somehow he managed to keep all these people together, even if their primary business is not selling data to third parties. But Dick, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alessandro, for a nice introduction. Can you see my screen? It's full screen?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Now I want to tell you a little bit about SeaDataNet, which is a pan-European infrastructure for marine and ocean data management. And as Iain already explained, let's say we have to collect a lot of data before we can do something with data. Let's say get more knowledge and take decisions. And for this, we already started in a very early stage, let's say in fact in the 80s, when we had the Marine Science and Technology Program of the EU started, the third framework. And we started building on this pan-European infrastructure. And the core players are what we call the national oceanographic data centers. But over time, we had an uptake by many other data centers, let's say in the marine domain. And that was partly due to, let's say, to the services and the support that we were developing for many other projects and also for many other initiatives and directives. So what you see right now is a map, let's say, with all the nodes. These are the data nodes. So these are all data centers, and most of these data centers, they are not only they are based at institutes, research institutes, but also monitoring agencies and others. And they are not only collecting data themselves, but they also bring together data from many other institutes. And this way, let's say, having also a national function or a thematic function, depending on the country. And what we do in SeaDataNet from the start is, in fact, we started developing standards for data management, marine and ocean data management, metadata and data formats, but also then the supporting tools and services, let's say, to be able to populate and use those standards. And of course, over time, also more and more developing data products, but also in cooperation with other projects, going more and more in using the data, and this way building products and knowledge products. And this way also having a better look at the quality of the data and the precision of the data, but also at, let's say, more requirements for what we call nowadays fair metadata and fair data. So if you look over time, let's say we started in this, I would say, in the early times, let's say with several EU projects. And those were projects, let's say, over time, it became a little bit the S3 calendar, let's say the S3, the research infrastructures in Europe. And we had a series of long-term projects with funding, FP3, FP5, FP6, FP7, Horizon 2020. And every time these projects were dedicated to extending the network, but also developing further the services, the standards, uptake of nowadays cloud technologies and etc. So it was really the research and innovation, you would say, for the network. Also, we've become now an ASPL since 2019. So we have, let's say, a legal basis for the network. And if you look at on the right, let's say you see a couple of the activities that we undertake, which I will highlight a little bit more in the following slides. So one is that we maintain so-called European directory services. And that means that we have, starting, let's say, with organizations, we have a catalog of marine organizations. And these organizations, they are active in projects, research projects in the marine domain. They're active in cruises by research vessels. They're active in observations, observatories, and they are in fact producing and managing data sets, global data sets, but also we have highly detailed inventory of those data sets. So these directories, let's say, they are working according to a linked data principle, and they're all fully supported by, let's call it schemas, but also fully supported by supporting services for populating and for using, and also machine-to-machine user interfaces. But also we make use of controlled vocabularies, and over time, these controlled vocabularies, they are a little bit like I would say the oil, let's say, to keep everything together, because it makes it easier, let's say, to speak the same language if we use codes which are supported by real descriptions. And many organizations, many projects, many other domains also worldwide have picked up those same vocabularies and use them so that we can share and interoperate with data to each other. Now, one of the core services is what we call the CDI, Common Data Index, the Data Discovery and Access Service. And over time, this started as a network where all the parties, they manage their own data. And we started with a metadata exchange, let's say a common index to the data. But after SeaData Cloud, we now also have a cloud data cache, because it's more, let's say, effective if you can immediately, let's say, honor requests for data from a common cache, instead of that you have to go down, let's say, the shopping demand, let's say, to each of the individual data centers, let's say, then the chain is more weak and less performance. And this system has now more than 115 data centers connected who bring the data in the let's call it in the shopping catalog. People can then make a query, have a shopping basket, and bring the data to them. And this represents right now data from more than 900 data originators, which are individual organizations like universities, research institutes, agencies, etc., that somehow provide data to this increasingly populated system. And these are some coverage of this. And the data is not only Europe, of course, because we have many research institutions and they are all over the world. And we have many different flavors. We have physics, chemistry, biology, geology, bathymetry, and geophysics. And as I said, more than 950 data originators. The thing is only that the data always originates from European organizations. So that's the key. It's not, we also have interoperation, of course, with the US and on the global scale with others. But we are not trying to copy or paste, let's say, their data, but we really are focusing on original, unique data from European data originators. For this, over time, we developed a lot of cooperation, and that's the key, in fact, to building this network and making it more important. So we are involved in many research projects, always in the role of for adopting and adapting the SeaDataNet standards and also helping with data management in those projects. We are involved in, or we work together with large ocean monitoring systems like EuroGoose, like Jericho, like Eurofleets, like EuroArgo. So in fact, all the platforms that are used to collect data for the sea. And again, we then serve the, we preach more or less the standards and the services. And also we provide the opportunities for long-term validation and long-term archiving. Also, we work together, of course, on a global scale. So with the GEOS portal, and also with UNESCO, the IODE network of ocean data. And we've worked very closely together with Europe, let's say with Copernicus, Copernicus Marine especially. And because they are, of course, they use a lot of data, but also they need standards. And there we have a common issue, common topic. And we are from the start, because EMFAF was started in 2009. And from the start, SeaDataNet became, let's say, a major player in EMFAF, which I will illustrate a little bit. In this way, you could say SeaDataNet is now an essential data management link between those who are collecting data with cruises, with operational monitoring, with fixed networks, with autonomous floats, etc., and the overarching infrastructures like EMFAF, like Copernicus, like Blue Cloud, and also the European Open Science Cloud, because we are the interactor between to harmonize and to organize the data flow so that the others can do their thing and the data is not lost. If we look at major cooperation with EMFAF, like I said, EMFAF was started by GEOMAR. In fact, Iain was one of the leading person in this case. Let's say he started this in 2009, and from the start we qualified with SeaDataNet as a leading infrastructure for the data management. Because we drive now several thematic portals because EMFAF is really looking at different thematics. You can see them in the picture. And it's focusing on making generic data products and services. So, and to be able to make those products, of course, you need a lot of data. And for this, let's say, having this SeaDataNet network in place, and also EuroBis, which is, let's say, another of our colleagues with more biodiversity, you have access to the data on a regular flow, and then can use it also in the products. This is, let's say, an illustration a little bit. Let's say so that this data discovery service of SeaData is really feeding into bathymetry, physics, chemistry, geology, and biology. So all of these, but it's a win-win situation, because what happened by EMFAF started producing very nice products. Those attracted a lot of users, and through this, also a lot of let's say other data providers want to be on board of EMFAF and want to be acknowledged and contribute to those products. And that meant that, in fact, the number of data centers that we had in SeaDataNet, we went up from 50 to 150 now, and this is still increasing. So more and more people bring their data into this organized network, and this way we can serve others and also make better products. And that's really, let's say, a narrative that many people understand in many different domains. So here's an example for bathymetry. Let's say bathymetry, when we started, we were using the JEPCOM model for a distal terrain model for Europe. And then we said, let's make the best model that we can by bringing together all the data sets that are being collected in Europe for bathymetry. And those are now populated, let's say, in this SeaDataNet system. So these are coverage of the let's say, the different surveys, single beam, multi-beam, you name it. And this is a 3D model. And over time, we now every 2 years, we release another digital terrain model, which has a grid size of about 100 meter by 100 meter. And is really the best you can get. It's fully integrated with JEPCO. So we have a close cooperation also in the CPAD 2030 project on an international scale. And every, let's say, every grid point has metadata supported by data, original data. And we have now more than 65 data providers and more than 40,000 surveys. And this is still attracting more providers of bathymetry data. And also the industry has fully embraced this model, and also all the numerical models, they use this model because it gives better results in their tidal and wave models. And the industry, they use it the other way around. They say, look, this is what we know. And now we can show you using this model what we don't know, and there we can help you. So that's also for them more or less a niche to show how far we can go and what they can add more to the equation. Now, if we then look at the European landscape, marine and ocean data management, you see that Europe is a little bit the same story that Iain gave, but on the left, let's say we have people that observe. We have with many different, let's say, platforms and sensors. And then we have a number of aggregators. And SeaDataNet is in fact a major aggregator for data management. Then we have EMFAF for data products. And then we have Copernicus, let's say, for using also the Sentinel and also forecasting products. And those three are the big players, you would say. But of course, there are more players in Europe that are collecting data and organizing data. And you can see that on the right, you see a number of research infrastructures and also EuroSea, of course, associations. And they bring together, let's say, together they are trying to cover the whole field with all these multiple variables and parameters that we have. And this is something that, over time, because of this, let's say, the Green Deal, the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, let's say, all these wishes to go higher in our knowledge and to go higher in our development of solutions for restoring the oceans, we said we have to bring more federation and integration between these. And for this, we also at SeaDataNet, we were one of the drivers of the Blue Cloud initiative. And the Blue Cloud is in fact, it's a G7 project. And it looks at the potential of open science for ocean sustainability. In fact, embracing the ideas about European Open Science Cloud, but also embracing the idea that we have to support, let's say, the UN Decade of the Ocean and the Sustainable Development Goals. And to do that, let's say, we developing a cyber platform where we have a smart federation of all the data repositories that I just showed you in the landscape, analytical tools, and also computing facilities. And this way, being fully convinced that if we can bring these things together, let's say the data, the tools, and also large computing, that we are able, let's say, to solve several of those challenges which are coming to us or are there already. So what we have on board of Blue Cloud, major players, which you can see here on the left and on the right. So we have Copernicus, we have SeaDataNet, we have EuroArco, we have Elixir. So we are already, let's say, in many domains with different types of marine science are on board, but also we have the e-infrastructures like UDAT, we have the DIAS from Copernicus, and also the D4Science infrastructure from CNR. And the overarching concept is quite simple. One is, let's say, improve the data and access, so bring more data on board through these different repositories and then federate those through, but a common standard with OGC, ISO, W3, vocabularies, and metadata, and then on the top, use the data more and more to develop added value services and applications, and be able to do analytics which you could not do before, using also major computing power and the so-called virtual labs. And this has Blue Cloud was a pilot for 3 years. We just finished it, and it was very successful because we next to these key products and services, we also made a roadmap in which we did the stakeholder consultation and really also involved many stakeholders from the, let's say, the people in the street up to the people at the highest level of management and decision taking. And let's say they all were converted and more or less supported the idea that we should continue, and therefore we have now the successor project, Blue Cloud 226, which is in fact we doubled in size of consortium, so we have more players on board, and also what we do is that the several of the things that we started in the Blue Cloud are now being, I would say, further activated. So we are, for instance, we are working together to to extend the data discovery and access service, the federation. So we bring more repositories on board, more data sets. But also we extending the virtual research environment, because also EGI is now on board with all their computing infrastructure. And also we bring on board other, a synergy with several other projects in the IT, in the VRE domain. They will be connected, a smart federation of those platforms. And finally, we are focusing on so-called essential ocean variables. So we're also setting up some workbenches, which allow you to develop in a more operational sense, like a factory work bench, you would say, to have a regular production of these EUV sets, which then can really be part of data lakes that can feed directly into this digital twin of the oceans component, which is one of the new developments right now in the marine domain. And this way, the blue cloud effect is I would say, is establishing itself as one of the major factors next to EMFAF, next to Copernicus, and all three, let's say, in support of the digital twin of the oceans. And of course, having on board in the blue cloud all the different research infrastructures, so they all can also amplify and extend their capabilities not only to the top, but also at the base, because there's also funding for that to make the systems more fair, and also adopting more machine-to-machine services. So finally, what I will say, I hope that you see this. So SeaData has a long run. But what we still do is we maintain standards, because every time there are new data sets, or new data types, like now we have noise, we have marine litter, we have many other data types that pop up. There are new instruments, they all demand, we have for instance, high frequency radar, we have gliders and so on. They all demand adopted or adapted standards. We have this large network that has direct contact with all the people with hundreds of people that collect data, and we give them service for long-term stewardship and also for validation, and also of course wider use of the data. And as I say, the collections are being used for many different projects and different products, and also they're fully used by EURONet and CMEMS, and also the coming DTO. And we are continuing this work, and also we try to stay state of the art by always adopting also new technologies. So it's not only getting more data in and using them and bringing them, but also, let's say, adopting new technologies like cloud computing, etc., which are to stay in sync with the modern society, and be able to really support the different projects and the different EU initiatives and directives. So I hope I gave you a good rundown, and it was not too long. Kept you too long from your coffee. I'm sorry.
I think it was definitely worth it, Dick, and so I think by now it should be clear why I insist from the beginning that this workshop could feature a presentation by Dick, because I think this process perfectly embodies the process we would like to instigate through our work, which is through a grant, you found an idea, and it's like planting a seed, and when that seed germinates, you have a beautiful and huge tree, which is what pretty much Dick has described. When did you get started? When was it the first time?
Well, I said the initial things were end of the 80s, more or less. Then we started, and we had, and then we were happy with the EU fund of, let's say, 20,000 euro. That was the. Okay. And nowadays you talk about project with 10, 15 million, these kind of funding ranges.
So end of the 80s. I mean, can you believe it? I wasn't even born. No, I wish it was like that. It's not like that, unfortunately. No, but it's.
So I don't want to say how old I am, but.
No, I just wanted to make a stupid joke. No, but it's impressive. I mean, starting with the grant and then getting to this point and being still here today and doing something that, I mean, it's not immediate how to do it. So I hope this this presentation can serve as an example and inspire also other project beneficiaries, because from the point of view of the policymaker, that's the perfect example of what should happen. Each euro of public money then creates so much added value. Of course, that's not going to be the rule, the norm for every grant. That's just impossible by definition. If you're trying something new, chances that you're going to fail are high. But there are also examples of very successful projects, and this is a very good one, perfectly spot on, because it's about ocean observation. Now, before we break down for coffee, I missed a question from Iain, and the question is for Fantina, I guess. And the question is, what proportion of litter is on the seafloor, what on the water column, and what on the surface?
Thank you for the question. I mean, it's very difficult to give an exact answer. Of course, there are estimates that you know, more than what we see is just less than 10% of what is actually in the ocean. So there are estimates that say that almost 90% of the litter ends up on the seafloor, and there are many studies that are showing that litter is really everywhere, also a very deep sea, in deep marine canyons, and this is also the real problem, because it's very difficult to recover this kind of litter. So it's if not impossible, like, so to take it away from the environment.
Okay.
It's much easier if it's stranded, and so you can do cleanup activities and you know, and collect like that. But of course, if it's underwater, it's much more difficult.
Well, brilliant. And yes, in the interest of time, I suggest, I recommend, if you have questions for Dick, we can deal with your questions in the second part of the workshop, especially because we're going to start exactly from this last presentation. So what is the best business model for a project to live on after a grant, for an ocean health and observation project in this case? Great. So we're gonna reconvene in 15 minutes at 11:30 sharp. And as I said before, don't worry, because we're gonna end on time anyway. See you in 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed your coffee, and think we're now ready for starting the second session. I noticed that few people left, or perhaps they will come back, who knows. So before we get started, well, first of all, I'd like to take advantage, because Dick reminded me with his presentation of something that is very important. He mentioned it, of course, but it's worth highlighting that all of your ocean health and observation projects, more often than not, they generate new data. And it's quite important in the interest of society that this data is not lost. You know that Dick mentioned MarGnet, the portals, and MarGnet data ingestion. I just want to remind you that it's very easy for the data you generate through your project to be stored permanently through this facility. We have a nice sticker here and a QR code if you want to take a picture, and there will be a step-by-step process to make sure that your data is stored permanently in a repository, publicly available, unless of course there are restrictions, and in some cases this data will also be evaluated for inclusion into MarGnet. So MarGnet data ingestion, take a look. If you have data, I mean, you have to unleash it and set them free for the Blue Society, as the slogan says. Right, so the breakout session, I would like this to remain relatively free form. So there will be these 3 probing questions, but of course, if you think you can add something to the discussion, well, just raise your hand and open your mic and just take the floor. That's the only rule. If you want to take the floor, please raise your hand, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to understand each other. So we're going to start with these 3 questions. Question number 1 is how to secure funding. What is the best business model, quotation marks, for a research or policy project, such as ocean health and observation projects? Question 2 is how to facilitate cooperation and synergies between project beneficiaries. And question 3 is what ocean health and observation should sorry, there's a typo here. What ocean health and observation research and policy priorities should the EC address over the coming years? Now, about this is very important. Oh, sorry, this is very important, but let me be clear, of course, all of your feedback will be, is quite important because it might contribute to future policy making, but at the same time, please, let's be realistic. I'm a lovely contractor. There is no guarantee that the feedback from this workshop will turn into a priority research or policy priority that will be funded. I wish I were this influent, but I'm not. The EU Commission is a large organization. There are rules. What I can promise to you is that the feedback and the report from this workshop will be circulated at the lab internally at the EU Commission. So it's quite important that you highlight any research or policy priorities that you think would benefit from further funding, because maybe this will taken into consideration by the Directorate General that is in charge of a specific research or policy priority. So let's start with the first question. And as I mentioned before, we're gonna link somehow with the first, with the last presentation, the one on SeaDataNet, because the question is how to secure funding, and what is the best business model for a research or a policy project in ocean health and observation. Why this question? Because with our work with the Synergies and Clustering project, we are dealing with a wide set of EMFF and EMFAF grants, and we're dealing with commercial projects, with blue skills projects, with regional cooperation project, ocean health and observation. Now, with companies, with businesses, it's relatively straightforward to understand how to secure funding, because normally business asks a company asks for a grant to fund their research and development because they have in mind a product or a service to develop. It's maybe too innovative. No market player is willing to put their money on this idea, and so they use a grant to further develop it and hopefully attract capital from the private market, or maybe sell the product upfront. With research projects, this is less straightforward. Of course, a grant is still useful, but then how to make sure that you can continue your project when the grant money ends. This is not straightforward. In some cases, you can apply for a new grant, but you're gonna need, well, first of all, a call and available, and you're gonna, come up with something new, because there's no chance that the Commission will fund you twice to do the same thing. So it might be useful to have a strategy, like companies have a business plan, and this is not a business plan strictly speaking, but a strategy to make sure that your project can live on even after the grant. Sorry. We saw that SeaDataNet managed to stay alive for a very long time, because in fact it still is alive. So this is my question to you, and I would encourage you to take the floor. What do you think is the best way to secure funding, or maybe what is your strategy to secure funding? Who wants to take the floor first? Don't be shy, please.
Alessandro, shall I
yes, please.
start,
please.
maybe?
Please.
Yeah. Now, in our case, it was a little bit like you say, you need to make an exploitation plan, because I think that's serious thinking in a project. And you can call it a business plan or exploitation plan, which means that you look at your strengths, and you look also where is a niche for your strengths, and say where can your results can be used by others. And others, I mean, let's say interesting programs like EMFAF or Copernicus, but also directives like the Marine Strategy Framework, the Green Deal, because in there, let's say there are a lot of opportunities. And in this way, you can always further develop your skills, but also, of course, tell first what are your skills and your capacities. And this way, look for how you can ameliorate these and how you can make those supporting those goals, which are formulated in those larger long-term programs, you would say. And by doing this, also what you should do is, if there are certain skills you are missing, of course, you are interested in finding maybe other partners that can bring those skills into your network, by which your network becomes even more valuable for, let's say, I would say, penetrating or going into these new adventures. And in the case of SeaDataNet, it was not so difficult because, of course, ocean data management over time became more and more a topic. And in the early days, we really had to fight for our cause. But over time, it became more and more logic to people that if we collect so much data, that you also need to have facilities to be able to manage those data and make them, put them to the production and let them be used by others and found. We also got the fairness wave that started, let's say, a few years ago. That was also in our favor because I think we were already quite on the fair wave, but it was also an opportunity again for a lot of new projects to be launched, which were on the fairness wave. So, and the last wave we were on is what they call the European Open Science Cloud, which is also a new program or a new initiative by the Commission. And again, it fitted our purpose, and we could make best use of that. And of course, at the same time, building, let's call it an EOS thematic network in the marine domain. So in general, I would say it's really like you are an entrepreneur. You have some certain achievements. You look for the opportunities, not only from the calls, but especially from the major programs, the long-term, and you seek to partner with them and to make yourself useful. And by doing this, you get opportunities for further developments. And by doing this, let's say this way, the ball keeps rolling. And a snowball, it runs down the mountain and it becomes bigger and bigger. And you have to be lucky also sometimes, of course. That's the other side, to be there on the right time. But I would say don't leave it to simply for the last minute, the last month, you say, hey, let's make an exploitation plan. I don't think that's wise. I think you should from the start, so when you are already getting some good feeling for your products and your key exploitable results, let's say, start planning and start also exploring the landscape. What are programs that fit your skills and that fit your purpose, and how to make best use of this, and get yourself acquainted with those networks and also with the people acting in those networks, because we are very organic in that sense. Socializing is very important. There's a term networking that's really is a major skill, and that skill you should develop it, supported of course by good results and by good promotion, but you also must have the social skills to develop your network further and make use of this. Just in short. Okay.
Yeah. No. It's funny because this is the first of our workshops you're attending, but you touched upon a point, an issue, a recurring issue, I would say. There is you can't afford waiting until the last minute to develop your exploitation plan or business plan, depending on your project. And interestingly enough, it's something that we have noticed may often happen also with commercial projects run by especially startups. This is a problem with startups because by nature, a startup is, well, not always, but quite often funded by a new entrepreneur. And the thing is, you don't become an entrepreneur in a day, just like Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't become an entrepreneur in a day. And so a lot of people, a lot of companies have brilliant ideas, products or services, but they somehow lack in some cases, not always, of course, the entrepreneurial skills to run a company properly. And it's quite a pity, because if you don't plan a post grant or a post anything strategy to secure the future of whatever you're working on, well, then the chances that you will be successful are very slim. And this is, interestingly enough, this is true both for a commercial project and for any other project, including an ocean health and observation project. So I like I think it's it could be one of the main takeaways from this workshop. I liked your sentence. it's like you're an entrepreneur. Because yes, true, maybe you're not making money directly through your project, but if you want your project to live on, to secure funding for your project, well, you need to start acting like an entrepreneur and having a clear strategy and doing the thing entrepreneurs do to make sure that the flow of money never stops. Anyone else would like? Oh, EuroArgo, Eric, please.
Hello. Oh, yes. Sorry, I didn't put my name. So I'm Iain Shepherd. So I'm the new project manager from EuroArgo since the 1st of January, replacing Sylvie Pouliquin. Okay, so thank you for inviting us to come here. And I would like to say, okay, like an entrepreneur, I just come. So my previous job was in marine renewable energies, and I set up an institute, which was public-private. But there was an incentive there. So public-private was, each time I got €1 from the private sector, I could get €1 of public money. And that was functioning well. And I began, so 10 years ago, I was by myself. And when I left, we were 70 people. So it grew finely. Now at EuroArgo, what I think is, okay, it's nice, but I have nothing to actually sell. I mean, our data are free. And are meant from the beginning to be free, not only at the international program, but I mean, of course, and the people that are using it consider them for free also, very happy that they are free. It's for the calibration validation of satellite data, for instance, it's used there. It's used also in modeling, in Copernicus, of course, for the for weather forecast, and it's free, and of course, and hopefully it is. Well, about health and observation of the ocean. I mean, it's something of obvious public interest for everybody, for the whole society. But when you look at it, sustained observation by satellite is supported at the EU level directly. The Copernicus Marine services are supported also directly. However, that's the fish stock evaluation is also supported by an incentive given to the countries that perform it. But if you don't have a direct support, well, in fact, like in the MSFD, you were quoting MSFD, well, ocean observation then should rely just on, member countries that are around a sea basin, or in our case of EuroArgo, of volunteering members, member countries. And but then that means that, and I will quote some countries, but Austria, Luxembourg, that have the means for that, they will never contribute. They are not on a basin, and they have no specific interest in oceanography. But the health and the observation of the ocean is also crucial for them, because it's crucial for the climate, it's crucial for the climate change, it's crucial for the decay of biodiversity. So I really think that should be an incentive which comes with any effort that's made at the public level by the nations, could also be supported by the EU directly.
Okay, thank you very much. Brilliant. Anyone has something to add on what has just been said? Oh, we have Sarah from Blue Cloud, please. No, maybe. Okay, maybe it's my fault. She was just trying to enter again the room. Okay, so someone would like to take the floor now?
Alessandro, I don't know, I'm Vincenzo. Oh yes, but I see also Fantina just switch on the video, because it would be interesting for us to get to know a little bit better the experience of Fantina, that got to have other projects after MarGnet, but also from Aaron from ExPloTect, as ExPloTect and BASTA, they managed to have funding at national level through a Horizon ERANET, as a continuation of the two projects. So it would be also interesting to have this different perspective from EMFF beneficiaries. Thank you.
So maybe Fantina, you want to go first?
Yes, thank you. And no, I just wanted to add so the okay, we are a research institute and we are public funded, so we are not, you know, necessarily used to business plans and things like that. So what we did, in fact, was to, you know, having what we think was a good idea to try to see, you know, to, you know, scan all the possibilities to continue, you know, the experience of MarGnet. That was a small project, but I think it was very good because it was small. So it was small and with a few partners. So it helped us to, you know, to start a collaboration between different partners, but also to clarify the ideas how we could go further, and then increase the size of the project in the MAELSTROM, but also in the live stream, where I forgot to mention before, also the MarGnet prototype will be upgraded and you know, and demonstrated in different areas of the Mediterranean. So this is, of course, a way, what we were discussing before. It's a way of getting different grants, but so to continue like that. So and of course, this is our main business, so to secure research grants. But of course, our partners, you know, there are also small enterprises that they also look for other fundings themselves to try to continue their research. What we tried, I mean, we didn't have from the beginning really a strategy, but now what we try to do, for example, in MAELSTROM, we have a dedicated activity that has already started that is really to define what was mentioned before, an exploitation plan for the new technologies that we are developing now. So this is, you know, part of the last year of the project will be devoted to that. So how, you know, this research, so to say, prototypes can be then upgraded and made available for other purposes, not only research.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think this is also very important. I mean, yes, I think that the general principle is, of course, that if you, I think I mentioned this before, if you apply for a new grant with the same idea, with just the same idea, it's very unlikely that you will be given a new grant. So you need to increase the size of your project, expand its scope, maybe test it in other sea basins as you are doing. And in doing so, of course, you can build on the results of your past projects, which is always, I mean, I think it's always useful to make a link through with previous work. So now maybe Aaron first, and then also Iain, who raised his hand. So I'm sorry for keeping you waiting.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to chime in here. I don't know if Iain actually had a question for Fantina, but
oh, please.
Sure. So the experience of ExPloTect and BASTA, I think, was a little bit. I had the feeling it's a little bit unusual because the topic was a bit unusual within the scope of the EMFF proposal calls. In general, so it was a relatively unique topic. And I think on one hand, we were unfortunate that there was no continuation of that topic within the EMFF program, because certainly we would have looked to expand and continue some of the work that we had done in that sort of first or only project phase. On the other hand, we were fortunate that the munitions topic itself has some momentum sort of at a larger, higher level, so that there were additional calls both at the national level and at the EU level in the MARTERA call. So, you know, there was a logical follow-on to these additional proposal calls, and we've been fortunate to be able to continue that work. And like I mentioned, so one of the things that we are sort of actively developing is expanding the developments that we did within the EMFF projects to other non-munition topics. And I think that is one of the things that then becomes a little bit critical in trying to continue and sustain what we developed during this specific project, because otherwise there wouldn't be much opportunity for doing that. And I think having the possibility of diversifying at least the initial focus was for us potentially important. And like I said, we've been fortunate that we've been able to continue within the specific topic itself, but that wasn't necessarily a given.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. And now I see a couple of hands raised. Iain, I think he was first. Please, Iain.
Hello. Yeah, nothing very exciting, but yeah, one of the reasons that maybe I touched upon it a bit in my presentation that we have difficulty is that the market often for the services and projects is much smaller here than in the US, because they have NOAA, which is a big customer, so they can order, you know, 100 instruments or something like this, whereas we can't do this. You know, each country has to. This is a bit the answer to the question from about EuroArgo, but also it's relevant also for the other projects as well, that it's different countries, different regions, all putting budgets, and they often don't want to spread put their money together on a project where they're not necessarily spending all the money in their own country. So, you know, it's this is and the EU can't afford to pay for all the ocean observation that's done by the EU. It comes to something like 2 billion a year. So it's a bit out of the question, but it is something that we're thinking about, and we have some sort of plans to remedy it. We'll just see how it goes. But interesting. And by the way, all the presentations from Aaron and Dick and Fatima were fascinating. Fantina. Okay. No, very good. Sorry, that's it from me.
No, thank you. Brilliant. And Jan-Hervé, you have something to comment, because I see you turned your video on. Or no? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No. Just about the fact that, yes, because I was quoted. No, the countries, they can do things together. And for instance, we are performing a central procurement, and it's something, it means in a whole in Europe, we are buying more than 200 floats a year. So there's also on the side of the SMEs that are, developing these things, also a market. It's not as huge, of course, as you said. Again, I was quoting satellite. I mean, of course, there's many orders of magnitude between these two markets, of course. But I mean, there's still also something there. And I mean, Iain, you were quoting the NOAA and which are also performing then the forecast, the weather forecast. I mean, we also have, in Europe, ECMWF and also all the national forecasting system. And we have this very nice operational oceanography systems that are working in CMEMS, And I mean, there's a deep interest in this, that's for sure. But everything is considered for free.
Yeah, but I remember that the joint procurement was supported by EMFAF. This was because we had an EMFAF project that insisted on joint procurement. Before that, it wasn't. So this is another way that EMFAF helped.
Okay. I know, I want to go on, but with an incentive then.
Yeah. Okay. Now we love Argo is beautiful. I mean, you read about it in all the IPCC reports. They talk about the pre-Argo time and post-Argo. It's a bit like before Christ and after Christ, you know.
but I'm not. And be sure I'm not just advocating for Argo here. I'm also advocating for everything which is concerned with ocean health, I would say, in a way. I mean, observation is something that we can do for science, and it's very important that you are, collecting all this within a MarGnet and that everything is saved, and that's for sure. But there's part of our work which is actually operational, because there's this monitoring that is mandatory for yes, looking where we are in the global change.
Yeah, no, I think this discussion is very interesting. Iain, you mentioned that maybe it's not relevant. I think it's very relevant, because this clearly is, I mean, that there is, well, in some cases there is a market for these products. I think what X-Ocean example, I mean, and Fleet USV is a sheer example of that. I mean, you can make money out of a device that is used for ocean observation. But most of the projects we're dealing with, they're clearly non-commercial projects by nature, unless you consider a public market for this project. So the fact, I mean, what you mentioned, the difference between the US and Europe is I think, quite interesting. And I mean, the question was how to secure funding. What is the best business model? Now, of course, there are things that we can do as project coordinators, and things that are not, over which we cannot exert any control. This is one of them. Of course, we can expect a project beneficiary to have control over this, but it's still an issue that I think is worth raising. It's worth ending up in the report. And the probably most natural answer would be, stronger European integration, but it's not something we can achieve through this workshop, I'm afraid. Still, if things are like that, I mean, I don't see why we shouldn't mention the fact that the not having a common public market for this may hinder, the development of the further development of certain projects. And now I'm truly apologize for keeping her waiting, but I do need to leave the floor to Charlotte.
No, it's fine. No worries. I mean, no, it's nice to see you, Iain Hervé, Dick. It's a very long time we haven't been in touch, but yeah, very long story. I mean, this explains that, ocean observation, MarGnet is a very long story, as Dick explained, and it's continuing. And it's also a bit different to, I mean, some of the EMFF projects, because it relates also, to our European infrastructures. You mentioned S3 in the beginning, etc. But in fact, you touched upon it, Alessandro and Vincenzo also before. It's interesting because we, under EMFF, we have, research organizations, and as Fantina said, coordinated, but we also have companies. And you mentioned it, and I was wondering whether maybe Melissa would be, willing to share a bit about the X-Ocean experience and how they've grown. Ian mentioned also Chiara from WSense, but Chiara is not here today. But I don't know if that could work, or someone from X-Ocean or Fleet Ocean would like to share shortly. They're here or later.
Hi, Charlotte. Thank you. Maybe in a minute. Just give me a minute, and I'll be happy to share.
Sure, no problem.
I like that we are sort of nudging each other to take the floor. And so you're somehow helping me. You're not leaving me alone. That's much appreciated, yes.
Yeah. we have this, I mean, you know, the EMFF is a bit special in that sense, you know, with those small projects, but with, you know, companies, research institutes. So we have a variety of stakeholders, I think. Yeah, that is not the same in all EU programs. Yeah, and with small consortia, which we've heard several times, you know, is making a difference also compared to you know, big programs sometimes like Horizon, etc. So that's why I think this this type of workshop is really interesting in that sense. And we also have a Blue Invest, you know, as a support mechanism for companies. We fund EMODNet. I mean, it's quite a, you know, interesting program with a lot of variety.
So it's not clear to me. Oh, please, Michael, please.
Hello, sorry. I know Melissa's trying to scramble away at stuff. You've caught us all by surprise, Charlotte. But thank you for for doing so. Very nice to see everybody, and nice to be involved. So yeah, sorry. For those who don't know, I'm Mike Lewis. I'm the regulatory and engineering manager here at ExOcean. So I work with Melissa on running a lot of the technical aspects of the grant programs, at least. So I can speak a bit to that side of things as a start, at least. So yeah, look, as you've said, I mean, I suppose we started the process here as a startup, and as Ian mentioned at the start, we're, I suppose, not a startup anymore, I guess. I think you mentioned 25 employees. I think I might have been employee number 23 or something like that. And that was, I think LinkedIn told me there last month, I think I'm 4 years here. It requires LinkedIn to remind me of that, because I never quite keep track. It feels like I've been with ExOcean for a lot longer, because an awful lot has happened in that time, and awful lot of that has been obviously assisted by the EMFF and the Fleet USV project. So yeah, we I guess back in 2019, very much a fledgling organization. We had I think we built our second USV in 2019, and we were primarily doing work for the UK Hydrographic Office. Was kind of our biggest client at the time, and doing their surveys for the civil hydrography program. And really, I suppose the fund and the contacts helped to springboard us across into other industries and other types of survey and so on, and also to grow our fleet, both in size of fleet and in areas of operations and so on. So yeah, we've gone from primarily working in the UK. UK does remain our largest market, I suppose. The clients there have probably taken to it a bit more quickly, as of the regulators. But we have moved so that our business is really primarily focused on offshore renewables, both development, operations and maintenance, and regular surveys and so on to keep those going. So that's the primary part of our business. Now, we have grown the fleet to, I think we're on USV number 25 at the moment, just in commissioning, yeah, we're operating around the world. So we've operated, just coming back in from a project in Norway. We've operated in France, in Belgium, obviously in the UK, in Ireland as well, around the world. We're about to start our first project in Australia, and operating in the US, Canada, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Taiwan. There's a large list that the commercial people keep far better track of than I do. But we've also, developed primarily how we operate the technology. That's been a huge part of the learning. We've got about 80,000 hours of experience on our fleet of USVs, which is more than anybody else. And the technology on the USVs themselves has developed in an incremental fashion. It's been quite organic and so on. But the way we operate as a business has changed hugely, and that makes a big difference to us. We both manufacture the technology and we operate it, so we provide data to our clients, and so we need to be in control of the full process there, and being able to do so efficiently and effectively has been huge. And as I say, a lot of that has come from the work that we've done through the grant. So yeah, it's been fast growth, but really interesting, and I'm very excited for where we're at now and where we're developing.
Brilliant, Michael, and thanks a lot for this thorough account. To be fair to the others, I must also say that ExOcean is probably here more the exception than the rule, is the fact that they're a company, of course, makes it, I wouldn't say easier, because as Iain said before, the ExOcean is actually a sheer example of a success story. It's just that the other projects are almost, I think, nearly all of the ocean health and observation cluster projects are coordinated by non-commercial entities, and for them everything is, of course, is different. Still, this is not to diminish the amazing work that ExOcean has accomplished so far. I think it truly is a success, an EMFF success story. But I would now move on, in the interest of time, to the second probing question that I have here. And the question is how to facilitate cooperation and synergies between project beneficiaries. Here we may mean everything, basically. Cooperation and synergies between beneficiaries of different projects, beneficiaries of different funding instruments. I think it was Dick who initially mentioned the importance of network and networking. If you want to support your project, if you want that your project may live on, it's quite important to have a solid network and to expand your network through networking, of course. So perhaps I would like to hear your experiences with that. Maybe I would start again. Sorry for I'm not picking on you as well. I would start again with Dick, because in this sense he has a quite interesting story on networking as well. So if
yeah, okay. Yeah. No, thank you. In this case, yeah, networking means that you are also, let's say, well informed. Let's say what's going on in your market, in your potential market. So you have to read a lot, you have to talk a lot with people, you have to also get acquainted with, let's call leading people with good ideas, or people that are behind certain initiatives or that represent certain movements. And that's why I say networking is even more important. Let's say they have always two steps. Let's say you have to develop a product, of course, which you have to be very capable, but also you have to be able to do marketing. And marketing is, in fact, is promotion on a market, by networking with the right people and making sure that they hear about your skills, your products, your services, but also they have to give feedback by which you can make your products and your services more fit for their purpose, because there's always an offer and a demand. And these are, of course, basic lessons, in fact, for a business plan. It's very basic, but reality is that I always notice also in Europe, let's say in our landscape, that not many people are really thinking in that sense. They are very focused on their project, and then in the last month they say, oh, by the way, we have to try to secure next funding or whatever, and then waiting for a call. While you can also, in fact, by being part of the network, you can also influence calls, because you can already bring certain ideas forward so that it ends up in a call. And that is, and that's, of course, that's the beauty of Europe. Say we have these framework programs, and in the framework programs, we we really have quite a good monitor, or I would say, antennas for the topics which are very relevant and that need to be developed further. And so we have all, for instance, we have the European Science Foundation with the Marine Board, and they make these status reports. And in these status reports, they really ask opinions and contributions from many research institutes, etc. And this way, they monitor more or less the state of the art, but also they are already defining and identifying, let's say, topics which need further attention, so that they end up in the calls. And of course, the Commission, it's really called the Commission. It means that we all work together. Let's say we are United Europe, I would say. And in this sense, you can also propagate your ideas, but also, of course, in an early stage already identify potential opportunities for your products and services. And that's why I say networking is not just going to a conference or something, but it's much more than this. It's really try to be part of the let's call it the ruling network, and those who are deciding and who are planning, and become part of them and feed your ideas, listen to them, and try to slip it in, and this way move it forward.
Yeah, I also like very much this concept of transparent lobbying, and it's
Exactly.
it's I mean it's nothing is illegal here, but simply by getting together, you bring about new ideas, and eventually you may end up influencing even future calls, as you said. And I have a question for you. In the history of SeaDataNet, did you ever have you ever joined forces with another project, and then you eventually applied for a call together? Just a curiosity.
Now, if you want to, in the beginning, let's say we were very much building our own network, would say, bringing more capacity and more, let's say, knowledge and expertise in data management. But then we went to the cloud, so we want to also adopt cloud technology, and then we made a strategic partnership with UDAT. UDAT is, let's say, academic network in Europe, and they are very active in the, let's say, academic computing sense. They are very active in the European Open Science Cloud. And we said, let's make a strategic cooperation for SeaData Cloud. So going from SeaDataNet to SeaData Cloud as a project, because we can't, we need those skills, let's say, additional, I would say, complementary skills, and it's better to bring them on board. And this way have a strategic partner, and then in fact playing chess on two boards. That's what you do at that moment, and that worked out perfectly. And from this we got more and more, in fact, in this EOSC European Open Science Cloud, in parallel to of course Ocean Health, the RTD programs, and also the programs of DG MARE. So it is a little bit, you have to do innovation, you have to keep on innovating, you have to keep on developing, but you also have to do operation, and you also have to do deployment. And in these, by running these three programs more or less in as a common floor, we were able to to have a very nice compromise, a nice balance. Another step in Blue Cloud, we went one step further. In fact, we said now we want to go to a much more higher ambition. So we're not only SeaDataNet, but also bringing other RIs together, working together with EMANET Copernicus. So we really made there, I would say, again, a big federation, but also, let's say, a big partnership with strategic partners like Copernicus Marine, like MacArthur Ocean, like leading parties in EMANET, and also leading RIs in Europe, and all together making a common agenda, and this way developing further the Blue Cloud. Because if you want to do the Blue Cloud, it's not anymore a project, but it's really an infrastructure, and it's also a community for open science, which you would like to propagate much wider. So it's not only in the interest of an individual partner, but it's really in the interest of the community. And this is something that is evolving very nicely. And I think also maybe Sarah, she's the coordinator of Blue Cloud. I'm the technical coordinator, but she can also add a little bit to this, how we are achieving, let's say, this common agenda with many other, let's call strategic partners, because it's much more than just technology and content, but it's also a lot of promotion, lobbying, marketing, outreach, etc. And Sarah can tell a little bit more about this.
Thanks, Dick, and thanks everybody for inviting us. I think Dick did a great overview of the story so far and how we've landed here. I like what Dick said, that Blue Cloud is becoming an infrastructure, and we have simply many concrete examples. Of course, there is a long way to go, but we have depicted some concrete collaborations in place. So over the last 3 years, for instance, we have started discussions one by one with a series of projects to working in the marine field, and that's where I think we've also met the Fantina and the colleagues in this room sometimes. For instance, to understand how the service offer that Blue Cloud is putting into this pot could be useful for them from the data aspect. So the approach to data gathering, the offer of data that Blue Cloud is capable of putting into its infrastructure to other projects that were not, for instance, accessing the same amount of data, the same type. Or in other cases, we have offered the computing solutions and the analytical services within the Blue Cloud framework. So we have built other virtual labs dedicated or mini virtual research environment for some project that needed the infrastructure, or on their side brought in new data. That's the case of Jericho, for instance, the Jericho research infrastructure. We started a collaboration with them, and they are now former official partners of the follow-up initiative of Blue Cloud 2026. So this is something concrete that will materialize over the next 40 months. But then other examples relate, for instance, to the dissemination and engagement, what Dick said, in the Blue Cloud 2026, for instance. We have introduced a novelty in the project, which is what we call the Training Academy. Why? Because all the legacy, the storage knowledge that has been built, not just in Blue Cloud, but even before, what Dick said, along the theme of the harmonization of the data sets, the interoperability of the data. We're trying to put this knowledge available via a series of courses, for instance. We're not doing this alone. The EuroGoose community is helping, providing a network in collaboration with the IODE Teaching Academy, for instance. So we are trying to reach other communities to pass the message there. On other side, from a less technological point of view, a more policy-oriented point of view, many projects have been interviewed to write the roadmap that Blue Cloud released and to which we've asked, so Blue Cloud is going into this direction. Where are you with this respect, and whether you think we should, are the topics that we are responding to by 2030, what is missing, where we should go? So we have a roadmap now released for the benefit of the European Commission, but also all the other projects, because what we learned by these interviews is that many other components are responding to similar objectives. We focus on, let's say, our main focus is on the data management aspect, but then in the roadmap, the cloud component came out, the data aspect came out, the networking and the community. We need users. Without users, we're not gonna anywhere. And maybe just to conclude, we are now looking at two main programs to bring forward the Blue Cloud infrastructure. One is EOSC that Dick mentioned, because the European Open Science Cloud needs the data federation approach that Blue Cloud introduced. And the other one is the digital twins of the oceans. Again, because thanks to the data that we are a catalyst of data, and the solutions and the environment, we can be a playground for applications to build, these digital twins that we know won't be one unique thing, but it's a composition of many different research efforts. So, yeah, I mean, Blue Cloud really wouldn't exist if it would not be for collaboration. So,
very good.
Yeah,
that's exactly the message we want to hear. So, as for the others, do you have any other example of cooperation, synergies between, project beneficiaries or maybe other initiatives, anything that can be used as an example of how working together ultimately pays off? And I'm talking to everyone. I mean, not just the project beneficiaries we have here. I mean, Fantina, Aaron, or we have Isabel, João, and Michael, Melissa, and I mean the others. Even from there's people from the Commission here. If you, even out of curiosity, if you remember good examples of different projects that at some point got together and created something new, it would be interesting here to say, because we're always looking for these nice stories to showcase. Oh, Warren, please.
Very fast. I think one of the things that I have found quite beneficial in these kind of multi-consortia or sort of a programmatic call are intermediate meetings among the beneficiaries. So we had the kickoff meeting in Brussels for this particular call. And I think at the time, there was a lot of discussion about project plans and less, of course, about how the projects are actually being executed and what's actually happening. So some of these kind of intermediate meetings are quite helpful to see the activities in other projects and think about ways of cross-linking with some of these other projects. And now with the simplicity of doing this virtually, I think that sort of thing is quite easy to do. And that's something that may have been beneficial in this EMFF call. If we had had something like that a year and a half into the 3-year project period.
Yeah, that's another recurring comment that networking events are quite useful, because it's true. I mean, it's been said repeatedly during our workshops that in some cases, project beneficiaries, they don't necessarily even know each other. So more networking events are always welcome, usually. Then it's also true that not everyone is interested, I must say, because we have, my experience, my impression is that there's a core group of participants who keep asking for more events, and another group of participants who just want to focus on their projects. And I don't want to judge anybody, but that I can't help but notice this discrepancy, which is probably normal. I mean, you cannot force people to work together, and in some cases, it might not make sense for you to work together with someone else. This may be true for example, for commercial projects. So, but this is just an option. I mean, I think we have quite a few examples of how working together may pay off in the long term. Anyone else would like to add something in this, how to facilitate cooperation and synergies, or maybe just quote an example from a project they know? Vincenzo, please.
Yes, I may share some examples. I mean, or something that I remember from a previous experience is apart from what Aaron said, that common project reviews or interim meetings, so that gather together projects and that were funded under the same call, supported some kinds of synergies among beneficiaries to come up with something new. But also I have the experience when there are people working sort of expert groups, so really working together for something that is not really related to projects, that really also facilitates the people get to know each other, and sharing ideas then in the past also brought some new ideas for projects that were eventually funded. So I can see these two ways apart from normal stakeholders or participating in events that are organized by commission or other projects. So something more specific from our side could be also these things. I can see that Charlotte also want to, she's raising her hand, so that's from my side.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Charlotte.
Yes, well, I mean, I hope we're trying a bit with this project, you know, to put not only projects from only one funding program together, but I really hope in the future, or maybe this is happening and I'm not aware. So let me know also if it is taking place. I think, I don't know if, you know, with the Mission Ocean or other schemes like that, there will be this possibility to put projects together across funding schemes. I mean, as you say, around the topic, as well as around the thematic, as we're trying here, because I know there are cluster events as part of a Horizon, etc. But it's good that many EMFF projects, go to Horizon afterwards and manage to have a call, so they're featured there. But I'm not sure this is the case for all topics, all thematics. And I think if we, if in the next step with the colleagues, also with the Commission, if we could promote this kind of events, not according to funding programs, but according to topic. Well, that's how I see it. And obviously also referring to these network and networking skills and social skills we've seen already on a number of times together, also with Alessandro as part of this project, that meeting in presence makes such a huge difference. So, I mean, for some meetings, a digital form is good. For some other, the physical one or irreplaceable, I must say.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And I see 2 more hands raised. I think it was Nicola first, or Nicola, sorry, I have no idea.
Nicholas, Nikolai, either one is fine. It's no problem. Thank you very much. Yes, in terms of this, of getting people to work together, and there was the comment about the difficulties in getting projects to work together. And this is always really tricky because everybody has their own take on the problem. They've been assigned and they're contractually obliged to also deliver what they have to within the project. I think the key here is actually not to try to make to get work packages and small project objectives to fit together, but rather the important thing is understanding what each project contributes to the bigger picture and to the higher objective that we want to achieve. And I think that's where we can create the best sort of synergies, is to say, okay, we have our own approaches, we're doing our own, you're using green, I'm using blue, but at the end of the day, we all want to achieve sustainable observation, whatever. And I think this is the best way to get these projects to cooperate, is to identify what the bigger target is everybody wants to achieve and what everybody can contribute to it. Sometimes it'll be different approaches, and down the road then we have to be decisions. But I think it's important to identify and stick to those higher level targets rather than just focus on single objectives within projects.
That's very good. I very much agree with this, I would say. And also what was said before, I'd like to add something about that, but first, please, Audrey, again, there's a name I have, yeah.
It's like Nicola, you can say
Okay,
it the French way, Audrey, or the American way, Audrey, whatever you want. Anyways, yeah, sorry, I've been kind of in and out this meeting because I'm taking care of my sick infant. But I just want to
believe me, I know what you mean. I have been through that. And
anyways, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to you a little bit about EU Ocean Ops, because and thank you for inviting us, because I think it's really relevant, because really the aim with this project that has been going on maybe for almost 3 years now, is really to promote international synergy across European projects. To actually, Nicola gave me like a really good introduction here to promote this greater objective and see how all these different programs kind of fit together. And we're writing right now the project for another 4 years. So I just wanted to share with you, I will put it in the chat, the website. Our team have developed, sorry, that wasn't it. Here, that's the one. You can find our mission here, but you can also find here basically the list of the different European projects. Right now, we've only worked, because I think that all these networking events are really important, but I think there's a lot of offline that needs to be done, of mapping the different projects that are happening in Europe and how they can contribute to each other. So our first step was to create or to sort this kind of list of the Horizon Europe and H2020 projects, sorted by different topics, so you can actually filter. And we're working right now, on adding more projects outside of Horizon and H2020 projects. So we can, understand how these different projects kind of like interface with each other, but also how they complement each other. And I am in charge of the European Bureau of GeoBlue Planets, and we, themes by themes, we are working on different topics, and we pull in these different projects when it's actually relevant. And that's the sort of things that we do. So I'm open for questions if you have any.
Okay, so you have a list of all projects. That link, sorry, I haven't opened it because it's.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So basically, it's a web.
You can share your screen if you want. Huh?
Oh yeah, sure, of course. Let me do this.
Oh no, you're okay. I'll make you a co-organizer. Sorry. So because
yeah,
otherwise you're not allowed
it.
to. Yeah. Just give me a second.
No worries.
Okay, you're now a co-organizer.
Yes, it works now. Okay, sure. Here. Zoom. There is always this bend. Okay, let me find it. That's the one I wanted to show. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So basically, this is the website that we have developed here under our EU for Ocean Ops project, which is, I didn't say, an FPI project from the European Commission. And if you look at EU for Ocean Data, you can go all the way here to Horizon Europe and H2020 projects, and you can find all the projects here.
Yeah.
Related to the ocean, and you can sort by topic. So if you're interested in, I don't know, I'll say fisheries. Yeah, well, there is one for now. But we will in the future. We're working on it. Right now, we only have Horizon Europe and H2020 projects, as I was saying, but we will incorporate more projects as time goes on. And yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
No, that's brilliant. I assume you used Cordis for that now, since you're mostly focusing on Horizon. Now, I also think that towards the end of this workshop, but above all, towards the end of our work, we are all sort of converging towards some common ideas. That this is very important because it's been mentioned before. And I'm also talking about what Nicolas said before about, identify the bigger target, what the bigger target is, what everyone is trying to achieve. And what you mentioned that, I mean, yes, events are important, but we shouldn't forget about the offline part as well. In fact, I must say that a few project beneficiaries often highlighted the need for having a common portal with all of this information on projects. If you come to think of it, as of today, I don't think there is just one portal for all EU projects by topic. You have Cordis, which is quite good, but then of course you can have, and you can use that of course for ocean health and observation projects, but you have ocean health and observation projects funded through EMFF, MFAF, LIFE, and some other funding programs, and it's still EU money anyway. So ideally, it would be great to have, in terms of networking, which is essential to cooperation, as we just discussed. I think it would be good to have this sort of common database for which people can be put in touch with each other. And then, of course, events. We mentioned events before. Don't remember if it was Charlotte or Vincenzo who mentioned live events. Live events is usually very interesting because in terms of networking, the best ideas always come when you're talking about something else. This is a common topic, and you know, a while ago, they used to say this about the Silicon Valley, that the strength of these companies was that they were working together, and the best ideas always came up when these people from different companies were met for lunch, maybe, and, you know, so they were, presumably, they met to do something else completely unrelated to their work, such as eating, but then they ended up talking about things that they would then pick up in their professional life. And it's and I think it's also very similar to what Vincenzo highlighted, that he found that working together in expert groups, for instance, even though this might not necessarily be related to a project, is always useful for networking, because then people get together, and when people get together, usually that's where you know, they have nice ideas or new ideas, and they try to experiment with something new. So I think we're approaching the end of this session. So, and there's still one question, one probing question to go. One of the most interesting, by the way, which is what ocean health and observation related priorities in terms of research and policy, in your opinion, should the European Commission address over the coming years? Again, your feedback will be circulated internally. I can't promise, unfortunately, that they will be funded, but certainly you have a chance to highlight what you think is important to fund. Who wants to take the floor first? Dick, please.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to start simply by saying that we are collecting and overseeing a lot of data on different domains, and also as part of EMFAF, let's say we make really great products. But also by the other side, let's say you can also see where are the gaps, because that's important. I say, you know, what's available and what's not available, and what should be available, more or less. And I think that's something that we have to make a plea and continue to work on this. Let's say that the Commission is helping, in fact, to targeting to fill those gaps. And those gaps are not always closing, but they're also widening, because we are getting more and more new subjects, like, for instance, marine litter, and also noise and others, which are, let's say, developing terrains. There's a lot being done already, but it's very, it's still in an infancy. And if we really want to make a serious effort, let's say, for restoring our seas and our oceans, we really should know better what is the present state and what we're dealing with. And that means that developing new technologies, of course, let's say to collect this kind of observations is very important. So those are targets. And another one is, let's say, also really trying to fill those gaps, and which are identified in several parts of European seas, and also in the surrounding oceans. And I think many of the partners in this project, or in this group, let's say, will really support this way and think alike. So that's my kickoff for this.
Thank you. Nicolas, please.
But a bit different from Dick, so probably a bit complementary then. From our perspective, we'd like to see more coordination. So there's a lot of initiatives going on many different things, and sometimes it feels a little bit like everybody's going off in their direction that they see fit, which of course is useful to an extent, but I think it would be nice to see much more coordination. So there being a higher, or from Brussels side, being a bigger push to try and coordinate all these efforts. It's good to have duplication. It's good to see what works and what doesn't work, but I think most people here would also agree the number of marine projects that have come out over the last 12 months and the similarities between them. I mean, it's tear your hair out type of stuff. I mean, there's so much overlap, and the difficulties of coordinating between so many projects is enormous. So that's an area that I would like to see more supported. I would also really like to see a much bigger push in terms of bringing the public sector and research together. We have a very, very strong push for always working together with industry, which of course has its merit and is important. But I think from also the perspective of utilization of observation, I think there's an enormous amount that could be done with the data that's being generated to make it useful for environmental assessments and so on. And that will come from the encouragement of much stronger collaboration between the public sector and the research world. And I think there's a lot of people in the research world that would be very motivated in terms of seeing their products and their data go towards greater good, for the lack of a better term, than just profit.
Thanks, quite interesting. And I must say again, you're not the first one who raises this issue of more coordination. It's good to have many different programs, but you know, as usual, there are advantages and disadvantages. So I think one should ideally strike the right balance to make sense of what is actually available, what are the possibilities. In a way, it's a suggestion to make the process more efficient, probably. Anyone else who'd like to suggest research and policy priorities to fund? I can't believe no one has ideas. It's normally when I ask what the European Commission could do, the answer is always more money. And I can't believe that the very first time I asked this question directly, nobody is answering. Jan Hervé, please.
Well, I think I already asked for money somehow. No, but I really think, I mean, we should look at, yes, what's really important to track, the ocean health. And for instance, you were mentioning the fact of collaborative projects that are working well. We have one with ICOS and EMSO, so two other ERICs on developing a new sensor for carbon dioxide in the ocean, which is really crucial because we just have proxies, I would say, of PCO2, but not exactly this measure, and that's very important. So yes, there are very few crucial parameters that should be monitored because the set of science says that they have to be monitored. And before going into any digital twin of the ocean, that the main thing is to be able to observe. And as I said, I also come from marine renewable energies. That's also a place where we have digital twins of the machines. And in this case, that means having sensors that are, constantly, recurrently giving information, and you just look at the difference between your model and what you're observing, and then this gives you a hint about what needs maintenance. And in our case, I would say where the ocean is going wrong. I mean, what don't we know already? So what are the new processes that we don't know? And also what's new, which is occurring and which is of concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned there are a few key parameters that did you mention these parameters? Sorry, or can you mention them?
Well, among them, that's for sure PCO2, pH, that's for sure chlorophyll, oxygen, and because that's the basic of the trophic chain, and then you could go up into the trophic chain, and it has to go. We need to look at all the biodiversity issues. That's for sure, and but and they're already identified. These,
no, but just so that I understand, you suggest that as more money is placed on measuring these parameters, that is what you would recommend. Okay. So the key parameters, even before the digital twin, you mean?
Yeah, because they are necessary for digital twins.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think it's a bit
and they are steadily useful. I mean, we're not just making a picture of the ocean right now. I mean, it's evolving. We have to track that.
Yeah, I think it's something that was well evident in, I think it was Dick's presentation with a sort of a value chain of ocean observation. I mean, there's someone at the bottom of the chain who really goes there and collect the data in situ, then someone who aggregates the data, then someone who processes the data, and then, so on, you go further downstream the value chain. And now, of course, we can also benefit from digital twins. So everything is really linked together, I would say. Anybody else who'd like to add something?
Alessandro, can I react to?
Yes, please.
Okay. Because I think it's one thing, we have a term for this, we call it essential ocean variables, and those are essential. The word's already there. So that's a whole group. It's the biology side, the chemistry side, and physical side, and those are target parameters always. Another thing is also this linking with the digital twin of the ocean, because that's the thing. The digital twin of the ocean, if we really want to make it work, we really need a continuous flow of new data, and in much larger volumes and much more operational than we do now. So it means that if we want to realize those ambitions, people have to understand it's not just making an attic or, let's say, a roof on the building, but it's really fortifying and strengthening the whole building and making it much more operational. And it means at the base, we need much more data, but also much more sustainable monitoring of those data sets. And that's something that's right now, it's people think that by having a, let's say, a solution on the top, you can solve the whole problem, but it's really the whole building has to be, let's say, drastically, maybe further funded and further expanded.
Okay, thank you very much. So if there's anyone left who'd like to suggest any areas or priorities to further fund, note that this is your last chance, because otherwise I will go on and wrap up the workshop with a summary of what we discussed. Also the others, I mean, well, I don't want to name anyone, to place anyone under the spotlight, but oh, Fantina, you have your hand raised, please.
I was glad to hear that we are working in the right direction, since we are contributing to get the new data about the marine litter, but not only, we are also doing a lot of work about underwater noise. So it's certainly, ocean pollution, marine pollution is a topic that needs to be addressed in the next years. But I would also like to mention that we need also not only observations, but at this stage the problems are so huge that we really need to continue to invest in solutions. Of course, concerning marine litter, the first solution would be to produce less litter. So we are all aware of that. That that is the first aim that also the European Union, the Commission, but also the cities and in general, we should really aim to reduce the production of plastics and marine litter in general. But we need also to do something for what is already there. And so I think if there are solutions that are shown to be working, they need to be continue to be subventioned, I think. So I mean, if we really select projects that were successful, that it worked in one place, for example, we are demonstrating activity technology in one place, but this could be also applied in another place. So if it's demonstrated that it works, I think it would be interesting to have programs that somehow helps to subvention the same technology. We don't have to start over again with something, all over again. Of course, you can improve, upgrade, make it better, but once you see that something's working, maybe it would be good to have programs that somehow help to apply the same technology, expand and in other places once we know that it works. Sorry.
No, thank you. And I think it's quite relevant. To be fair, I guess it's something that it's embedded in some EMFF and EMFAF call, but I might be wrong. Maybe Charlotte knows better. The fact that you have to extend, I mean, it's allowed, it's sometimes encouraged that you extend the results of a project to other regions, sea basins, and so on.
Yeah, indeed, it's part of the evaluation criteria, but there is no, mechanism on our side so far, for EMFF to make sure this takes place. So I see also the point from Fantina, but from a policy point of view, yeah, it's part of the evaluation that the project should consider, replication and sustainability ways, indeed.
So it is an incentive, but of course, yeah, okay. And in the meantime, I also see that João left a message in the chat that we need more. If you want to say it yourself, João, you can, or otherwise I can read it for you. Just let me know. Okay, I suppose I can read it for you then. And we need more integration between social and ecological data in ocean projects to better tackle the most pressing issues of our oceans, such as climate change, biodiversity loss, marine litter, and social and ecological systems need to be tackled together, and that can be pushed in by European Commission funding calls. Great. So I think I promised we would finish before 1 p.m. as scheduled, so 7 minutes to 1. I think it's time to, unless someone has any last minute comments, just in that case, just please raise your hand. I will briefly recap the main points raised. I took notes. Then, of course, we'll also make available a workshop report with an extended description of this, of the output from this session, and we'll also publish this video on YouTube and on the Maritime Forum. Anyway, the first question was how to secure funding. What is the best business model for a research or policy project? And the main takeaways were, well, of course, you've got to have an exploitation plan, and ideally you've got to have it from the beginning or even before you get started with your project. If you do it at the very last minute, well, it might not work, and might is an understatement here. Look at your strengths, of course, and and also at your weaknesses, but try to capitalize on your strengths in the long term. Network and networking are very important to expand your project and to increase the chance of survival. And I also said I liked this statement. It's like you are an entrepreneur. Even if you're not making money directly, the mindset should be pretty much the same. Outreach activities are also very important to make sure that your ideas are spread among the community. And so, I mean, that also increases the chance of finding new partners and expanding your partnership and get new funds maybe. Something else we had was on this question, increase the size of your project. Of course, if you apply for a new grant with the same project, well, it's very unlikely that you will get one. But you can increase the size of your project by building on past project results, and maybe extending the results to other regions, as we just said, or other sea basins. And then it was noted that there is an inherent limitation for some projects to escape the grant trap. And this inherent limitation is that the market for ocean observation projects tends to be smaller in the European Union, if, for instance, compared with the US. Not much we, as a group of people, collectively can do right now, but I think it's still something that it's important to be aware of, because I mean, if you have to act like an entrepreneur, well, you've got to know the full context and know what are your opportunities, but also your threats and challenges. The second question was how to facilitate cooperation and synergies between project beneficiaries, and a few highlights. Well, don't get too focused on your project. Well, of course, you have to be focused on your project, but not just on your project in isolation. Being part of a network makes it possible to indirectly and perfectly legally influence calls. How is that even possible? Because by getting together, you can generate new ideas, and by bringing about new ideas that spread around. That's exactly the mechanism why you can indirectly influence a call, and that's also why this is perfectly legal. Common project reviews were mentioned as a way to facilitate cooperation and synergies. Networking meetings, of course, preferably live, though we know, I'm talking to Charlotte and Luca now and Vincenzo, we know that after COVID, it's become a little bit more difficult to convince people to travel. It depends on the kind of package you're offering to people, but still, there's a good number of project beneficiaries who still believe in networking meetings. It was also mentioned that working together even in expert groups, even when this is unrelated to a project, it may be quite useful, because people get together and then they might create something new. Identify what the big target is and what everyone is trying to achieve. It was mentioned that yes, these events are important, but there's also an offline part that is quite important, such as, for instance, a common mapping of all projects and project beneficiaries. And we saw the link to EU for Ocean Observation. It's going to end up in the report. I think initiatives like that are quite important in terms of facilitating cooperation and synergies. I mean, before getting people together, we must make sure that people are aware of other people working on the same subject. So these initiatives, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Commission, of course, but I think are very important and much welcome. And in terms of priorities, those that were mentioned, marine litter, noise, I mean, it's not that these priorities are not being funded right now. In fact, they are being funded, but everything is still sort in its infancy. So in the future, this might become or should become even more important. It was pointed out that aside from more money, also more coordination would be welcome, because sometimes it's like one may have the feeling that there are too many initiatives, and then it's difficult to make sense of what is available. So it's not just about the money, it's also about the efficiency and the clarity of the whole thing. Bringing together the research world and the public sector in terms of views, it's quite important, and also probably quite an incentive for the research sector to keep on working on what they're doing, to make sure that it's not just research, it becomes something that is actually used. There are a few key essential parameters that were mentioned by Iain before, such as CO2, phosphorus, chlorophyll, and so on, that needs to be monitored constantly. And of course, there already is funding in place to do that, but this is quite important. And even before the digital twin of the ocean, not that this is not useful, but these activities, I mean, the monitoring of the ocean is key to everything else that happens after. So this is still quite a priority. And I think that's pretty much it. I apologize if I missed something, but of course in the report it's going to be different because we're going to rewatch all this workshop. So before I close the meeting, I would like to ask to Charlotte or Luca, Vincenzo, anyone else from the Commission who's still online, if you have some final words.
Yeah, maybe just to thank everyone again for joining the workshops, and what a beneficiary from EMFF and from the other initiatives, because it's really what we're trying to do. We have 2 workshops to go. You mentioned in the beginning, and a final event. And the final event we will try to have also as many of you participating. So watch out for the news. And thank you very much for attending. And thank you, Alessandro, and all the Cogea team behind the event for a very successful and interesting one. Thank you.
Thank you. And as Vincenzo pointed out in the chat, there are some synergies who are being created as we speak. And I mean, just read the chat and you know what I'm saying. Thank you, everyone, for being here until 1 p.m. So it really is lunchtime. So again, thank you very much, and enjoy your lunch. And well, keep an eye on the Maritime Forum, because we're going to make available everything about this workshop there, and you will also receive an email, by the way. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, bye now.